somba upulanito somba upulanito.
First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. I think I'm really proud of myself because I can stand here as a musician, as a researcher, and of course as a Malukan. Let me introduce myself to you. My name is Ricardo Supota. I am a researcher fellowship in Rizal for October for this year. And once again, I would like to say thank you very much for the committee that already arranged this session for me. So I stand myself, and since no one's cheering me, do I have to stand up? There's, let me see, I think it's just it's really difficult to construct our identity nowadays, because I realize since I am doing bachelor degree as a part of social science and my magister degree as a music practice or analysis or song, whatever they say. I've been thinking about how we can pronounce ourselves as musicians. With the title sounding the spectre of the political party in Masawaya, I'm trying to fill the gap between spectre materialism. I will tell you later what is spectre materialism that I meant, but I want to fill the gap about the discourse about our sonic, about our music and political situation, and also about our humanity nowadays. So, without further ado, let me explain to you. Yeah, next. Yeah. Yeah. I believe that we, the archipelago people, possess our own knowledge system for understanding how the universe works. It is not rigid framework, but a living cosmology, one that continues to evolve as the world around us changes. To be Moluccan is not inherit a fixed identity. It is to participate in a lifelong process of becoming. As we know nowadays, new myths becoming another myths, and the process of becoming it doesn't stop. It still continues. And the world also is constantly changing. The technology emerges, ways of living transform, and the new myths replace the old ones. Yes, I do not believe that the past simply disappears. The past remains with us, quietly accompanying the present, shaping how I understand ourselves as imagine for my future. Okay, next. Yeah. I met Derrida and Mark Fisher idea, concept about spectrum and hauntology in a class of Sanatha Dharma. I met some people. The concept of the spectre is Derrida trying to say that there is something still resonates so deeply with our own inquiry, and the past never truly dies. It lingers, returns, and insists on being heard, not as nostalgia, but as unfinished presence that continue to demand ethical and political attention. So, Mark Fisher that get involved in Derrida ideas, trying to construct hauntology in sound music ways. Mark Fisher, in his work, trying to put sound music that still can be longing and ringing until nowadays in spectre things, like Derrida said. And yeah, this leads me to a simple question: how do we attune ourselves to these spectral frequencies? How do we listen to stories that cannot always be found in written archives? So there is the introduction of my abstract, how I'm thinking about sound, how I'm thinking about spectrum. I will go to the answer. I will take a material that we Moluccan use as abstract, as some, not an abstract, I mean, as tools, as a framework to becoming, to becoming what we have to be, of course. Yeah, next. There is 3 sonic materials that I always find in our custom traditional in Maluku. There is tifa, tahuri, and also kapata. What you hear before, the performative that I'm doing is kapata, tifa is the percussion, and the tahuri is the symbol of nature. And these are not mere traditional artifacts. They are living technology of memory, media, through which history is remembered, relation is sustained, and knowledge is transmitted across generations. Through sound and performance, they allow the past to remain active within the present. Among these, I'm particularly interested in Kapata Hena Masawaya. Next. Yeah. Kapata is an oral tradition of the Moluccan people, expressed through chants, song, poetic narratives, and ritual recitations. For centuries, it has functioned as a living archive, preserving genealogies, customary laws, migration histories, cosmologies, and relationship between communities. Unlike written documents, Kapata exists only in performance. It survives through bodies, voices, memory, and quickly became widely recognized as one of the sonic symbol of Moroccan identity, from cultural festival, official ceremony, and diaspora gathering worldwide. But like I said, sometimes conflicting meanings always happen. When you Suharto era, Hina Masawaya cannot be singing because it's there. Yeah, it's getting articulated near to RMS itself. So I'll play a video for you, but because I understand the bear is my language, and there's a lot of things that I keep to make it safe, I think, because I want to continue this research. So I will play a video for it. Putar video. Ada di yang dukung. Ada suaranya? Ya, suara. Ada suaranya? This technical issue. I'm sorry. Yeah, maybe I can continue. We will figure it out. Within Moroccan diaspora communities, Kabupaten Massawa is often associated with the political memory and served as an important marker of diasporic identity. Because of its close connection to the Moroccan diaspora in the Netherlands, it has long been regarded by many as part of Aramis imaginary, and at one point was even banned in Indonesia, like I said before. That prohibition has never entirely disappeared from its afterlife. Even today, although Hina Masawaya has entered the sphere of both musical, popular music, its reception remains ambivalent, marked by a mixture of fear and pride. So, in Morocco itself, however, it is more commonly remembered as a part of cultural tradition, increasingly absent for everyday life. As the Kapata travel across different social, political, and geographical contexts, it's accumulated new interpretation. It becomes simultaneously a customary chant, a politic symbol, a cultural emblem, and a sonic memory. So, rather than asking myself which of these feelings is the most present in the walk in 2016, and yeah, we're here next. I mean, if our brothers in existed in diaspora can use it as a part of our culture, in Indonesia also we can use it as our part of our culture, right? Because it's stands for Moluccan identity. So I will play it next week.
Lagu itu cerita rakyat, cerita tentang bagaimana manusia awal-awal itu ada. Rumah sini separuh, aku nangis bukan karena sedih, tapi karena lagu itu lagu leluhur orang Maluku. Sempat nggak boleh nyanyikan lagu itu karena dianggap lagu.
Yeah. So people from Maluku, for a while we can sing in Indonesia, in Suharto. And yeah, rather than asking which of this meaning is most authentic, I ask different vision. What allows this voice to continue returning? I propose that Kabupaten Masawaya can be understood as a spectral sound. It is neither entirely past, not entirely present. Like Derrida and Marquise said, there is past is not always fixed, and the future is not always be like we walk, we see the end of Masawaya. So I argue that Moluccan identity is not something preserved and changed from the past. Rather, it is continually sounded, negotiated, and reimagined. Identity for me is not lived because the past remains intact, but because its spectres continue to resonate within the sounds we perform today. That's all for me. Thank you very much. So, for the end of this session, I will sing Hena Masawaya for you.
Nama Sawaya Nama Sawaya Nama Sawaya Nama
Thank you so much, Mas. That was a really heartwarming performance that we are privileged to watch. And attendees, we are now entering the last panel, Inter-Asian Curatorial Dialogue 2, which will be delivered by our chair, Mbak Liliana Mulia, and our speakers, Bron May Upiso, Barbara Titus, Stevie Norton, and Bas Achterberg, who are joining us virtually via Zoom meeting. Please welcome the chair speakers to the front.
Alright, welcome back everybody to the discussions. We have 3 speakers for the last session, but the last one will be joined via Zoom, I think. And I would like to introduce first Roan May Opiso is the collection manager of the University of Philippines Center for Ethnomusicology, tasked with the management of its archival collection. She's involved with the center field research activities in different parts of the Philippines and its repatriation efforts of giving back copies of their digitized sound recording to its source community. She was one of the ethnographers for the Philippines Bamboo Musical Instrument Innovation Research and Development Program. Is graduated from University of Philippines Diliman College of Music, hold degree Bachelor of Music major in musicology, and has completed 2 years of museum management training for higher education institution and under UP Baguio Museo Cordillera. She's currently taking MA Anthropology at the UPD College of Social Science and Philosophy. The second one, should I introduce one by one? Can you do that? Okay, yeah, I've said different method today because I got suggestion from the speaker that we're doing introduction and then presentation, and then after all of the speaker complete their presentation, we can collect each one question for each session. Okay, you ready to also? Yeah, I think it's ready. Yeah, then time is yours. Can you use?
Hello.
Oh.
used to the good afternoon, everyone. I am Roanie Opiso. I'll be discussing navigating concepts of ownership between the indigenous and Philippine national legal frameworks in the case of the UP Center for Ethnomusicology. Just a disclaimer, this presentation is a sharing of reflections of the Center's experience of navigating notions of ownership and its policies and operations with regards to access and outreach, especially when it comes to our ethnographic audio collection. I would also like to add that I am no legal expert, so I will briefly discuss relevant Philippine laws that guide and impact how the Center's archival operations work. So for background, where do I do it? Oh. There. Oh, next piece. Sorry. The UP Center for Ethnomusicology is a music research center based at the University of the Philippines in Diliman, Quezon. We have a library, archive, instrumentarium, and an audio conservation laboratory. And our holdings include recorded music and open reel and cassette tapes, field notes, musical scores, music transcription, text transcriptions, and translations, photographs, instruments, books, and journals that came from various collections of different scholars. So we were established in 1997 by the university's Board of Regents. Our founding collection, so our archival collection contains ethnographic materials focusing on the music and cultures of the Philippines, as well as Asia and other parts of the world. Our collection includes more than 2,500 hours of sound recordings, 18,000 photographs, 10,000 pages of field notes and vertical files, 200 plus music compositions of 2 Philippine national artists for music. So our founding collection is the Jose Maceda collection. It consists of various audio field recordings, field notes, photographs, and instruments from different Philippine ethno-linguistic groups, as well as other countries in Asia, Africa, and Brazil. We actually have Indonesian, though I'm not sure if these are dubbed from other recordings. So various recordings were from the 1950s, but many of the audios are from the 1970s during the Ethnomusicological Survey of the Philippines. It is a field research project where Dr. Maceda and his team of research assistants trained in anthropology and linguistics went to the different parts of the Philippines where traditional music still survived, and they recorded it. This collection includes research and recordings of his fellow scholars who gave Maceda a copy of their recordings, such as these scholars are, for example, Robert Garfias, Nicole Revel, at that time MacDonald, William Pfeiffer, among others. This collection was later inscribed into the Memory of the World International Register, recognizing its importance as a documentary heritage. So this, and then the collection was digitized starting in 2007. So from the Maceda collection, the holdings of the UPCE continued to grow as we began accepting collections and research materials of other scholars and researchers related to music and sound traditions of the Philippines. It added to our digital archive, collections of Philippine national artists of music like for example, researchers like Felipe Landa, whose recordings of the Hinilawan epic chants of the Panay Bukidnon was one of the earliest known recordings of this epic and was also inscribed in the UNESCO Memory of the World. We have the Ramon Santos collection, and he was a former director of the center and is also a national artist for music. His collection is more of his composition and published recordings. And there are other collections from other researchers and as well as our own research as a center. So access to the archives. In 2007, the UPCE began digitization of the Jose Maceda collection with the aim to safeguard content of the collection and make them more accessible to scholars and artists. Digitization of the materials also entails the review and revision of our access policies and procedures to tailor fit it to the needs and context of the centers and its users. Part of managing the collection is also dealing with intellectual property rights. Someone mentioned it earlier, asked about it earlier, but this is of course related to the center. This IP rights is defined in the Philippine law called Intellectual Property Code of the Philippines. As a law, of course, it is one of our guides on how the materials of the archive and the library can be accessed and used. With regards to this, with managing the collection, we had to unpack or learn the various possible right owners of the materials from the funding agency who supported the Ethnomusicological Survey of the Philippines, who is the author or the main researcher, what are the roles of the field researcher or the recorder, the ones who went on the field, to the performer or who was recorded in the performance. At the most basic level, we are guided by the idea of fair use aspect of the copyright, where it also has something to do with the access of the materials and use of the materials are limited to scholarly, artistic, and non-commercial work, because many of our materials are unpublished. In addition, part of using copyright is giving portion of the recordings. Portion of the recordings could only be reproduced or copied by the archive client for their use. So if you're going to listen to it, you can listen to the whole thing, but if you want a copy of it, you can only get, we don't have, the law does not say any amount, but something of fair use, so you cannot copy the whole thing. It's only a portion of it. So beyond the legal notion of ownership, we know that the concept of intellectual property rights is a Western concept. And though it fits the concept of the archive, since it's also very Western, this is not true for the content of our ethnographic collection. Many of the recorded music in our holdings fall under the indigenous knowledge, systems, and practices. Within the legal framing, we call the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act, which protects indigenous peoples and their rights. And so indigenous knowledge is seen in a collective intellectual right, unlike intellectual property, which is more individualistic in nature. Like if you're a songwriter, the song is yours. But if you are singing a folk song, the folk song is owned by everyone, or there's no really composer alone. And the center in acknowledging the ownership of the audio recordings belong to the source community, where it was collected, and thus we embarked on a repatriation program starting in 2013. So we returned digitized field recordings of Kakanay music to Sagada Mountain Province, that's up north of the Philippines. In 2016, we returned recollection of Ibalay recordings to Kabayan Benguet, and we returned another copy of Kakanay recordings to Sagada in 2020, among others. So what we do is, from the collection, we select an ethnolinguistic group. We look at in the records, it came from this particular town, and then from that recording, we return it to the specific municipality. So it's a very specific to the place. So that's what we've been doing. So we are just in repatriating the materials. The access policies and procedures of the center are not applicable, unlike the ones we impose on our archive clients, since we recognize that the ownership of the content of the source community's ownership of the content of the material. So when we return a copy, the community is free to use the materials the way they see fit. We only request that they acknowledge who collected those recordings and also recognize the center's role in digitizing this material and returning them to the community. So if they want to publish that, they're free to do so. Or at least we are giving that, right? But that's something that can be studied. Anyway, reflecting on ownership and repatriation. As we continue with our repatriation initiatives, it's been more than 10 years already. 14, if my math is correct. There are still issues of ownership that we still navigate and reflect on, that we can use to critique and improve our ways in repatriation. This issue of ownership may show to whom we return the recordings. Currently, the center gives compilation of recordings to schools, to local government unit, and also if it's the city of the mayor, the surviving informants or heirs, if they can be identified, surviving heirs of the performers of who were recorded, as well other institutions recommended by either the LGU or people who are knowledgeable within the community. So that's one aspect. In repatriation, of course, in ownership, we also have to consider, again, a review what materials can be repatriated. Like we know with the Jose Maceda collection, there is the collection that Maceda and his team, they themselves as a group collected as part of the project, but then again, I mentioned that there are other researchers who gave Maceda their material, because Jose Maceda collection is a term because the whole corpus of the materials was cataloged by Jose Maceda. So there's this issue of, as a collection, he authored how it was arranged in the archive, but then individually, Robert Garfas owns his own collection within the Maceda collection. We have to review if are we allowed to actually give away that material. So those are small details that needs to be reviewed. Of course, I think recently Dr. Garfas said that, oh yeah, we left that in the Philippines so that it can be returned to the community. But again, we need to look for those sources to cover all the bases of legal aspects, and we cover. Even if traditionally we know that it is owned by the community. There is also another aspect of needing to be critical of the concept of community-owned, because again, we question, are all indigenous knowledge of a community truly owned by the whole community? Since we are not part of the community, there might be local notions of ownership that we do not know, such as are there songs or rituals that can only be known by certain people of that community, whether by gaining a certain status or age. To give us a very specific example, when we did our repatriation in 2013, we hired a local to transcribe and translate the songs. And then that person gave feedback to us, asking, like when her husband passed by while she was doing that work and reacted that I shouldn't be listening, well, non-verbatim, that I shouldn't be listening to this. I am not of the right status to be able to listen to that. So as you can see, there are nuances that are not, there are notions of access, I guess, or then ownership of access to those materials that we might be treading because we are not fully aware of what's inside. Because of course there are languages that we don't know. There's more than 100 languages in the Philippines. I can only speak 1, 2 at most, and we are dealing with 50, 60 plus of these recordings. So these are notions that we have to navigate. And are there other songs that are, aside from that, things that are gatekept by, no, not really gatekept, but what is within the notions of access within the community? Are there also songs that are very personal that we just can share with everyone? I have to recognize, and I think it has to be recognized that a community is not homogeneous and it's not always harmonious. There are local politics that we have to be sensitive to and tread carefully. It is these questions and issues that the center must continue to be reflexive of and be critical of our repatriation practices. And I would like to end with a reflection that there is nuancing in repatriation that is contextual to the material, to the location site, and the community or ethno-linguistic group that you are returning to. That's it. Maraming salamat po. Thank you very much in Tagalog.
Very interesting story, I think. We continue with our second speaker. Barbara Titus is Associate Professor of Cultural Musicology and the Curator of the Jaap Koens Collection at the University of Amsterdam. She was co-project leader of Decolonizing Southeast Asian Sound Archives together with Melia Momo. Currently, she is an executive team member of this program. There's summer school program led by Pamandana and also Vidya Vitraningsi. You ready to give your presentation? Okay, probably 15 minutes. The timer.
Sure, yeah, we wait for the PowerPoint to come up.
Okay.
I'll use this one to have the battery saved for speakers. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Great. So I will try and keep it short, but I haven't timed this, so if I'm closing to my time, please interrupt me. As you just said, I'm the curator of the Jaap Kunst collection that has passed this day already several times in several talks. And this collection is located not only in Amsterdam, but also in Leiden, in Hilversum, in Jakarta, and in Berlin. I'm the curator of this collection because it belongs to my job as an associate professor of musicology at the University of Amsterdam, so I got this function with the job when I accepted that job. And you might wonder, what am I doing here in this session, Inter-Asian Curatorial Dialogues, with me as a Dutch curator of the Dutch colonial collection. So I'm also wondering about that a little bit myself, so I want to really literally give a position statement right now, and I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible. A position statement where I outline how the curatorship of this collection is actually shaped by so many people, not only me. And many of these people are in this room. Many of those people also are not in this room. But I would like to sort of make clear that network in which I take a specific position, but it's not just my curatorship. So, next slide, please. Thanks. So what does the Jaap Kunst collection consist of? Or maybe the more important question that was already raised by Mas Adit and several other people, what is not in it? What then is the sound archive? That was also mentioned. As you see in this list of things that are in the collection, you see that they're not just sounds. There's of course sound recordings, but there are of course also hundreds of musical instruments. There are 6,500 photographs, there are glass plates, there's an hour of silent film, there are ethnographic reports and publication manuscripts, and as Pat Margono already outlined, 40,000 pages of scientific correspondence, which is a really important aspect of indeed contextualizing the sounds in all kinds of ways. So, that's also something that I find important, that we centralize sound maybe, but that it's all in connection with other modes of recording. So it's really a multimedia collection. Next slide, please. How was this recorded? You see here the phonograph that was already also mentioned in previous presentations. The Edison Ambarola 50 phonograph, which is a horn, as you see, where the sound is being sung in the horn and then sets a membrane in motion just like the human ear. And the human membrane steers a needle, and the needle scribes the airwave into a wax cylinder. So this is earlier than the gramophone. It's not the piringuita, but it's a wax cylinder in which the sound is inscribed. And as was also said earlier, how was this, if we ask how was this connected, Jaap Kunst was very selective about the kinds of music that he collected. So he only wanted to collect music that, according to him, was authentic and pure and was not contaminated. That was really the word that he used, besmet, not contaminated with Western or outer influences. Of course, this is an ideal that is very much connected to the, to a colonial era of fixing and boxing certain expressions as static and unchangeable, and also often belonging to an ethnic group of people. So it was a really racialist theory on which this idea of worthwhile music and not worthwhile music was based. As I said, there are also photos, films, and musical instruments that were often exchanged for cigarettes or sweets with people from various communities in Nusantara, which were sometimes donated, but also bought. Next slide, please. So if you see where Jaap Kunst recorded, he basically went through entire Nusantara. Nias, Nako, Sumatra, Kalimantan, Sulawesi, Java, Bali, Flores, Sumba, Timor, Kisar, Kai, the Moluccas, Raja Ampat, and also donated recordings and musical instruments from Papua. And then, next slide please. Then the question is, what are these recorded objects actually? Are they objects? I think we have seen enough demonstrations today that prove the opposite. There are voices, human voices, maybe even beyond human voices, ancestor voices. We've just had a demonstration of Kap Verdi and his team, which really touched me immensely because it was such a direct demonstration of how sound directly affects us as persons in the room in a way that other media do in different ways. So this immensely powerful idea of this presence of sound in a room that also has an afterlife and is haunted sound because it comes from a past that sticks its head up now and then and is expected in colonial way, in nationalist ways, that we are all affected by. And if you hear the sound, you feel the affection in a very direct way. So in a way that's also very problematic that these fleeting sounds, these presences that affect us all were boxed and categorized and classified in very specific ways from a European colonial gaze, or hearing, if I'm more precise. So next slide, please. That's why I took this picture, included this picture as well. It's taken in a missionary museum in the Netherlands, which is we were there with Vincent and Elsit a year ago, I think, a little bit more. And there was a room which was full with these butterflies, beautiful, beautiful butterflies with all colors and sizes. And they were from the entire world because this SVD missionary society was everywhere in the world. So they could collect butterflies from everywhere in the world and then compare and say, okay, we have this butterfly here from Latin America. It looks very much like this butterfly from Kalimantan. So might there be a connection between Kalimantan and Latin America? And Kunst was basically doing the same with music. He wrote these essays about, you know, the links between Papuan music and African music, and between Javanese music and scales that might be the same. So there was huge speculative thought on a global scale because of all this collecting, of all this hoarding of stuff that you can then compare. So yeah, that is an interesting thing, but also problematic. So now here we are with the who made this collection. I didn't want to sort of centralize the person, but the collection is called the Jaap Kunst collection, so it's named after its collector. Whereas, of course, it consists not of the voice of the collector, but of the voices of the many people in Indonesia and Nusantara. And moreover, Kunst was not the only one who did the work. His wife, Kati Kunst van Wely, did a lot of work as well. So they basically set up this archive with musical instruments, with photographs, with sound recordings. They did it together. And she did a lot of annotation as well, a lot of categorization. But we actually don't know her role because Kunst said, yeah, she's very important, I could not do it without her, but what she actually did remains clouded. So the agency of his wife is actually not articulated. It would be interesting to research that. Of course, Margono has already also unveiled many of the agencies of Javanese nobility, of local intermediaries that Kunst could not do without, and it's their selection of Gioia di Puro, for instance, or other people who really have had an immense influence on how this collection was shaped. So the most important question actually is, what do we do with this material now? And of course, Bandoni already raised that as well in his talk. What's next now? What do we do? And this is of course, most of all, a question for a curator like me. But I'm not trained as a curator. I'm just a normal academic, a lecturer, a researcher, a musicologist. So I'm learning on the way. And we have had a really insightful overview of how curatorship was seen in the past by Daniel, about this linear methodology of collecting, researching, displaying in a sort of linear way. This was of course also how Jaap Kunst worked very, very much. And of course we want to change that, and of course that's already happening with the more circular, new museology ways that you mentioned. But then I also want to quote Vern Harris, who said in 2011 already, legacies, they are never received. They're only ever made and remade. So this is my reflection. How do I do this making and this remaking of this legacy as the Dutch curator that I am, with a colonial legacy in Indonesia, I have to say. My own family, my grandparents also had a milk farm in Surabaya. My father was born in Surabaya, grew up in Surabaya, but as from European parents. So my family history is also entirely entangled with this colonial history in a personal way. So that's why I think, how am I doing with time?
7 minutes.
Do I have 7 minutes left? Okay, I will be very quick. So that's why I want to really do this position statement. Next slide, please. Yes. Because I'm situated within a network of scholars, of artists, of curators, of activists, cultural activists, who are co-shaping my curatorship. We do this together, of this collection, and I'm learning from all these people and more people here continuously. So I just mentioned quickly what I learned from whom. You see Birgit Abels on the second to the right on top. I've been thinking with her for maybe decades already, because we both want to research, she's also a musicologist, we want to research how music is a carrier of knowledge, a shaper of knowledge, because in European aesthetic theory, music is suspect as a carrier of knowledge. It's nice as entertainment, it's nice as a craft, like cooking, but it's not an art in Europe until very recently. And it certainly cannot say something about reality because it's so abstract. So in Europe, music has always been suspect, also in theological sense. So Birgit and I have been thinking for a long time, how do we navigate, how do people, everyone, navigate their world through sound? How do we orientate ourselves through sounds, as we've done just now with Kak Verdi's performance and with all the sonic examples that we heard today. Then I've also learned from Chitra Ayandari, who is in the room, on the utter left in the middle, because Chitra already was much more critical towards Jaap Kunst before I was critical about Jaap Kunst. Mostly with regard to the legacy in Indonesian ethnomusicology, the petrification of practices and the singular labeling of practices that became very normative also in ethnomusicology in Europe, but also in Indonesia. Then I've heard a lot from Melo Yamomo, who's on the top left, and who will hopefully join us on Wednesday. Melo was actually the first one who said to me, you have to claim this position as curator of the Arcus collection, because there was always a sort of problem between the UvA library and the UvA musicology department, and this position of curator was actually dormant. And he said, you have to stand for it and stand at the gate and be the gatekeeper. This is my collection. So with his sort of support, I sort of did that. Melle taught me the role of a dramaturg, that in the constellation of people and the curation of work, you don't have to be the controlling producer and say how everything has to happen, but you can be the dramaturg who facilitates people to do their thing and give advice if needed, but then you're facilitating people instead of telling them what to do. Then I've learned a lot from Ronnie Kareni. He's an activist from and for Papua, he's right in the middle. He has demonstrated and taught me how music and performance are domains in which a person or a community or a nation can be sovereign, self-governing, even without having a state. So music feeds into this ability for self-governance of one's body, of one's language, of one's laws, of one's values, gestures, expressions. And we've also seen that in the example of NIAS, where that is happening, and in, of course, with Kaap Verde's performance now with the Moluccas, very clearly. Then I've also learned from Patsri Magono, who is at the bottom, second from the left, about the importance of sonic expression and music in Asian practices of historical consciousness, that history does not just happen through writing, but certainly also through oral transfer. And what I found really insightful is that Parmargono explained about this verb, listening. We always use that as a very sort of way of saying, oh, we change now, we become decolonial because we start to listen and we give the room to listen. But there are also very problematic colonial connotations to the verb listening, where someone has to listen to someone else, which of course the Dutch used a lot. And then I've learned from Sol Maris Trinidad in the middle on the top and the UPCE team. For the reasons that Dawn just explained, I mean, I think you're much more further on the way with thinking about these things than we are in Europe, about how metropolitan scholars deal with source communities, especially also with regard to the idea that the only thing you have to do is actually give source communities the equipment to record what they think is important to keep. Why would we decide that as metropolitan scholars? That is something, is such a simple idea, and I never thought of it. So thank you for this. Maybe my time's up, but 2 minutes? Okay. Then I looked from Vidya Vitrianingsi, for the, and we all know her, she's on the utter right in the middle, about how women's creative labor is often overlooked in historical documentation. And this is true not only in Asia, but everywhere, I think. I also learned a lot from Domingos LCD, who's at the bottom right, how cultural expressions are really crucial to socio-economic circumstances, again, sort of connected to what Ronnie Kareni was also saying, and give people opportunities also. Then of course, I learned immensely a lot from Donnie Christian Daghi. You've just heard his account, so I don't really have to repeat that. But the only thing I want to say about it is that in NIAS, when we were in NIAS last year in 2025, I really realized how this academic, navel-gazing discussions in Europe about our colonial pasts are completely irrelevant to what source communities need now. So that also made me aware of things. Then I learned also from Rebecca Laya a lot, because you showed me the importance of education on the spot, and I saw your university growing as with a pioneering spirit, and how important it is that people have the access to higher education on the island, and don't have to go to other places to get it, because then they will not come back and they cannot be at the island. And then lastly, I also learned a lot from Rani, Fitriana Jambak, and Ferdi Zukota, who are, Ferdi is at the top right, and Rani is just below, next to Lydia. Because you just give me tangible examples, and Ferdi just did so, of sound archiving that you can do via performance, that does not have to be extractive, but can be done performative in collaboration with those who are implicated in the material. So next to text and description, which we of course also need, performance gives a kind of affective presence that we've just all experienced with various performance, that enables collaboration and dialogue with those who choose to be recorded rather than are happy to be recorded. So last slide, that's basically, I said already what's in the last slide, please, next slide. That is basically summarized what I learned and why all these people are important for the curatorship of the Outputs collection. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Now we're moving to the third speaker, but they join us virtually. Are they already online? How can we check?
Hello, I hope you can all hear me.
I can hear your voice, but not.
You can see me?
No.
Not yet? My
Yes,
camera is on.
Yes.
Now you can see me?
Yes, I can
Okay,
see
good.
the voice is also clear. Good morning, I believe still morning there, to Stevie Knowlton and Bas Achterberg. I will introduce both of you, very brief. Stevie Knowlton worked as an archival researcher at the Netherlands Institute for Sound and Vision and has a background in art history and art policy. She is committed to democratizing and repatriating colonial heritage material, working closely with underrepresented community to identify and fill in archival silence. She is involved in various NESV projects around decolonizing the archive and inclusive archival practice, such as Resound. In addition to research, Stevie has been a council member for the Anti-Capitalist Party, PIJ1, in the city of Utrecht. Yeah. The last one is Bas Achterberg, is an expert in using the collection for historical research and is involved as a curator in museum programming. He regularly writes online story about media history, and a project from the past are the DVD series Dutch.
Yes. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Indeed, for us, it's still morning, but our sincere apologies that we can't be present there in Yogyakarta. Unfortunately, with my other job as a city councillor, this week we're discussing the city budget, so I'll be stuck with that, which sounds a little dry, and it unfortunately is a little bit dry. My apologies that we can't be there, but from what I've heard, there are a lot of familiar faces in this room. I can't see your faces right now, but I trust on that, that you are all there. So thank you for the introduction. I will skip the pages about our introducing ourselves, so we don't have to do that. But today we want to give a brief overview of what Sound and Vision as an institute is, but also regarding our collections with a colonial context, and also highlight a project that we do to position ourselves as an institute that is more inclusive and has more just archival practices. As you may know, is that we have a large archival collection, but we also have a media museum, which you see here on the screen. On the left and on the right, you see the archive itself, at least the physical, the canyon, I believe, if I say it correctly, but Bas knows way more about this. And we don't only have audio collection or audiovisual collections, but also radio, television, YouTube, written press, podcast, games, political prints. So a very large collection with many sorts of objects. And now I will give the floor to Bas, who will dive deeper into that.
Yeah, it's interesting when you are an archive, like how has the archive developed? Where does the collection come from? And in our case, you see a list of archives that are all part of our collection, or that is the institute that we are. So in different times in history, archives come into being, and very often, as you can see, it's related to universities. The first sound archive started at Utrecht University in the early 1930s and was more formally established in the 1950s with an academic film service, Stichting Film en Wetenschap, which wasn't only an archive but produced audiovisual material for universities for research and education. So it's a different set of collections that we have, and that makes our institute quite interesting because you could say, like, academic perspective on media is completely different from broadcast that is directed to a general audience, and we mix them all. Next slide, please. In 1997, all these different institutes were merged into one archive, at the time called the Netherlands Institute, or Netherlands Audiovisual Archive, sorry, which was renamed in Sound and Vision in 2002. And we opened our building in 2006. And since then, there have been several events that shaped our collection. One of them is the fact that we were able to digitize quite a lot of material in a project which we got state funding for between 2007 and 2014, which means that a lot of material hasn't been available easily for research or other purposes before, because it was still analog. So this shift from analog to digital has been very important for academic research. For us, the merges with different other archives or museums is interesting because they all have a different perspective on the use of media continuously developing. And we opened a new media museum. We changed our media museum after, let's say, 14 years. We opened in 2006, and then we closed down in 2020 and opened a new one in 23. And all of these developments are about the perspective on media, which in our case is very often for a general and large audience. But of course, we work together with a lot of other institutes when it comes to other collections, such as colonial collections. Next slide, please. Because, well, as we say, we do have material with colonial context, and here I have some examples of mainly visual collections, so films, which date from the 1920s until, well, today, basically. But very clearly colonial are recordings from the 1920s, where two filmmakers in particular went to Indonesia to film everything they found. It was really like the exotic view on the colony, and for a lot of people in the Netherlands, this meant that for the first time they could get a view of the colony. Later on, there were newsreels to inform both people within Indonesia as in the Netherlands. And particularly an interesting one is Woorden de Wereld, which was a newsreel during the colonial war, which was financed by the Dutch government. So it wasn't like a newsreel with independent news, but it was Dutch propaganda. So these are examples, and interesting is also the broadcast. So after 1950, a television comes in the Netherlands and reports about Indonesia, but also reports, or there are documentary series in which we try to get, well, to discuss the colonial era. Next slide, please. Then, oh, that goes too fast. One back. Yeah. This is a list or some examples of colonial audio collections. Jaap Kunst collection was already mentioned, and the interesting thing is we have other material that comes from the Royal Tropical Institute, the so-called KIT collection, which contains other recordings from other curators from the Royal Tropical Institute. And it's also over a long period of time. For us, it's difficult to know exactly what is what and where did it comes from, because Jaap Kunst, as mentioned in the previous presentation, is from the University of Amsterdam, but it's housed here. I'll have an example. I think that's also interesting for those who have never heard, but of one of the wax cylinders. There are other organizations like Philips, the company in the south of the Netherlands, produced radios and wanted to sell radios in Indonesia, and therefore established a broadcaster that broadcasted from the Netherlands to Indonesia. There are some recordings that have been preserved by Philips and handed over to our institute in, I think, 2000 or something. So quite recent, actually. But there are also Japanese recordings during World War II. Vincent Kouterbouwer, who's in the room, can tell you more about that. And we do have Radio Netherlands World Service, Radio Nederland Wereldomroep. But that is a collection that is still in process of getting into the catalog. So officially, you cannot look for it in our catalog, but it is here. So it's an example of many audio clips. And the next slide, then I can let you hear something like Jaap Kunst collection. The wax cylinders sound like this. Oh, I don't hear it. Perhaps.
Es folgt Übertragung der Walzen der Sammlung Kunst Indonesien. Es folgt Walze 1.
The difficulty with this kind of collection is, of course, that this is held in Berlin. It's digitized over there, as you could here in the introduction that was in German. And I just had a short clip because it's about 3 minutes. Wax cylinders are about 3 minutes. And you really need knowledge to understand what you're listening to. So these kinds of audio collections, as Barbara already mentioned, are dependent on cooperation between a lot of people. Next slide, please. These are two examples of what the Fohi and Neerum radio sounded like.
Hallo dames en heren, hier is Hollands de Fohi, Philips Omroep Holland-Indië, op een golflengte van 25,57 meter. Tabe tuan, Nanonya Nonya, di Tanah India, di sini Fohi, station radio Philips di Negri Blanda. Golflengte 25,57. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is station PHI of Philips Broadcasting Holland, India. Our wavelength is 25.57 meters.
Hello, everybody, English-speaking listeners all over the world. This is Neon calling from Batavia, Java, radiating station PMA on a wavelength of 15.48 meters. In about 1 minute from now, we shall broadcast our news in Dutch, followed by a short musical program. After that, we bring you a talk in Dutch. Our news in English will be given at 12:45 Greenwich Mean Time.
Well, it gives you a sense of what it sounded like. It's multilingual, as you can hear. Only few recordings have been preserved, so it's not that many. And in the case of Fohi, for instance, very often it has been recordings that were previously recorded to the broadcast, and that's the reason why they were preserved, because usually radio is live. So it's also a very specific part of what was on the radio. It doesn't give you a sense of the complete station in that sense. These are only a few examples of our colonial collections, and then there are some issues with this, of course, as you can see in the next slide. For instance, well, as usual, the rights issue. We're the host of conservation, but we do not always know where it comes from, or we host it for other organizations. But I think it's similar to what one of the earlier presentations told about, not only copyrights in terms of copyrights, but also immoral rights, or like when it comes to the repatriation of material. The accessibility is an issue. In terms of, like, in the Netherlands, it's easier. We, since a few weeks, have something called a treasure room, which gives access to the general public to quite a lot of our collection, and especially everything that has been signed as out of commerce. These are developments that are very good in terms of, like, giving access to a larger audience. But when it comes to researchers, the most effective way is to cooperate, to partner within a research, so we can give access to data for researchers. That helps a lot. Another issue is, of course, digitization. We have been able to digitize quite a lot of our collection, yet we still do have a lot of analog material that has not been digitized yet, and also requires quite some expertise on analog material. And very often, you know little what's on it. The example of Jaap Kunst that I previously gave, in our catalog, there is very, very limited information. It basically tells that it's a recording from Jaap Kunst in the 1920s or 1930s. And sometimes it mentions some Indonesian terms, but very often that's it. So in that sense, we only know little. We're not experts ourselves, and in that sense, we are dependent on external community knowledge of the specific material. So cooperation in research projects or making contact with communities is crucial in every sense to understand the collection and to give access to the collection.
Thank you, Bas. And regarding on working with communities, for the past 1.5 years, we've been running the research project called Sounds Familiar, and it's about decoloniality in the archive and institutional accountability, and working on both archival access but also agency within the archive, and working with historically underrepresented communities. And for to focus our research, we worked with diaspora communities in the Netherlands, so we can step by step try to create a more inclusive archival practice that's more equitable. And we do this step by step by doing interventions in the archive, such as community-sourced metadata. And we do this in co-creation sessions led by community leaders. And of course, we know that we don't represent an entire community and they're not a monolith, but we try to have a group of people together that are quite diverse in age and in other ways diverse within a community, to at least make a step in filling in gaps in the metadata or countering certain narratives that are dominant within the material itself or how it's described in the archive. We also analyze how people are searching through the online database. And from what we've now seen is that it's quite user unfriendly. And that is not only for people that are unfamiliar with the archive or the online archive, it's also for people that are familiar with the archive. So for example, we've seen that people use different kinds of spelling if they look for certain material, but also we see that people have to readjust their terms that they fill into the archive like 5 or 6 or 7 times to get a search that is sort of close to what they're looking for. But they also often see that the material that they're looking for, that they know that exists, they can't find it. So they said one of the participants said that being forgotten is worse than being described badly in the archive. And that really stuck with us. So we try to take this to account in trying to make the archive more accessible, but also we try to get the metadata that they fill in that is community sourced and lead it back into the archive. So in the future that they can find specific material with the terminology that the community use. And regarding of that, they say it's harder to not being able to find representation or yourself in the archive. We also, in these steps, try to identify archival silences and to see where are some historical gaps. If we look with this specific group of people that are diaspora communities, we work with both the Surinamese community and representatives of the Moluccan community in the Netherlands. So we look more to material, not the examples of what Bas stated in our collection, but more relatively newer material, starting from 1960s till the 90s, for example. and we try to see if there are certain historical gaps in our archive that are important to collect for the future. And we also try to see if we can acquire some of these material to fill in historical gaps. And the goal is not to make our archive necessarily bigger, but to make it more complete, or to map it maybe with other institutions or grassroots initiatives, so at least people know where to find certain material. Another part. Sorry? Okay, I'm almost done. Yes? Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And also a part of the project is artistic residencies by two artists, or an artist and an artist collective, to reuse material and put them in a decolonial context. And we gave them the opportunity to work with the archive as a whole and make critical work about our archival practices and our material. And in the end of the project, we will deliver a methodology to work with underrepresented groups within the archive. So we started as to work with these groups, but for example, there's also been interventions to work, for example, with the queer community, or there's also people from a Muslim archive in the Netherlands working with parts of the methodology to create a more inclusive archival practice. Here you see some behind the scenes footage of the co-creation sessions with the Surinamese community and the Moluccan community in the Netherlands. And here you see the representatives for the artistic residencies, the artist Tarona and the collective Beyond Walls, that often also works within Indonesia or with artists from Indonesia. And at the end of this year, they will also present their artistic work. This is the end of our presentation. I think if you have any questions, please let us know. And I think now we go to the round table. I hope I am still within the time frame, and my apologies.
Yes, it's really huge. Okay, we're moving to the Q&A session. I will invite somebody to ask one question first, and then maybe you can briefly introduce yourself, and then let us know if you ask a particular person here. Oh, a lot. Okay, probably Mbak belakang. Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Fitria and I'm a master student from Universitas Gadjah Mada. I have a question for Barbara. Thank you, Barbara. But I noticed a big contrast in this project. Why is the archive in Java mostly about Kraton music? But in other islands like Nias, it shows very local and village music. Did the colonial framework see indigenous people differently in Java? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's there. Thank you very much for that question. I think it's a very important one. I have all kinds of ideas about it, which are not sort of scientifically substantiated yet. So it's a bit of speculation, but it's a very good observation to make that indeed Kunst recorded muziek from Java, from the Kraton, from the Vorstenlanden, from the royal countries, and then from other islands, so-called music from other classes. Although, for instance, in Nias, I think it was also mostly nobility, right? That was recorded. Yeah. But I think there's a hierarchy there that was a colonial Dutch East Indies hierarchy that maybe it's not my place to say as a Dutch foreigner, that might be still in place with regard to Java being considered by our kunst at least to be more civilized in sort of European sense and more halus than other regions of Indonesia, which were called in the Dutch colonial times the buitengewesten, the outer provinces. So there was a clear hierarchy in this colonial thinking of Java as a metropolitan center and the other islands of Indonesia as a periphery. And the ideas that Jaap said about the purity of music and the purity of expression were entirely fixed into that hierarchy. Not entirely though, because I think in Nias and maybe also in other parts of Indonesia, I don't know, it was also nobility that was recorded, right? Yeah. So yeah, there are all kinds of hierarchies there and assumptions about hierarchy that you see reflected in what music is there in the collection and what music is not there in the collection. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, second question, maybe. Mbak Rani.
Thank you so much. My name is Rani from Bugaram. It's really interesting to listen both of your presentation, and I'm thinking of like combining both of your topics about the position and also how UP Manila take a position as an institution to become a center of the archive of Filipinos some artists or recorders. As I ever also experienced listening to the Jose Maceda collection in UP Center, and also I just know that there's also another collection from the other some archivists, and I feel like I'm reflecting here in Indonesia, doing the recording between young generations become popular, but I believe there are also Indonesian recorders that already did this work. And so far, I never see any institution take the part to keep it as a knowledge for everyone. And as far as I know, there's Otto Siddhartha, Tommy Prabowo, that they are also like distinguished experimental, contemporary composition things that they do, and also very they're doing very good job in archiving the sound. I ever listened to Otto's story when he was recording sounds in Papua in many places, and I also listened to how he did the recording with the very big recorder things. It's already digital, but with the big battery things. And yeah, I'm still thinking that maybe if we talk about the position, and now UGM specifically, History Department already take the position to as the, maybe we can say like the center of some heritage studies, then I'm thinking, it's also very important to collect the knowledge from Indonesian artists, Indonesian field recorders, to keep working together, curating the sounds together, the archive together, because it's important for the young generation and also for the further research about Indonesia specifically. So it's not only Yapkos that did the recording in Indonesia, and also not only Margaret Katomi. Still, we keep talking about outside of Indonesian field recorders doing field recording in Indonesia. But how about the Indonesian artists? I think it's important to take the position, and because we all here agree and have a big concern about sound as research, as part of the important research in the future. Thank you.
I'll just add, like, center having all that survey is because of a project by Jose Maceda. It just so happens that he's prominent ethnomusicologist in the Philippines that knows a lot of people, and the other researchers gave that to me. And the center is, it's an honor and also a huge responsibility to have that with us. And I guess in Indonesia, you also have to find like who can keep all of those. But with the center now that we have this massive collection, we are also in the process of decentering, because we are like Indonesia, we are an archipelago. Why we recognize that there's a need to have a center, because there are people who goes to the center. It's easy for them, for those in the university, those in the city center, for researchers to have something that they can access. But now we are in the process of decentering, in a sense that what we're trying to establish community archives as part of after the repatriation. Because again, it's part of access, relation to access and acknowledging the ownership of the community. So because not all communities can go to Manila, like they need at least 14 hours of bus travel. The transportation in the Philippines is very bad, to put it very lightly. So there's also a need to reach out. So there's the process of the importance of maybe someone in a university or maybe someone, a national institution, to hold it, but at the same time, not everyone, especially in the Philippines, can go to the center. So there's also, the decentering of these information. I guess I don't know in Indonesia if there's a strong already very regional or very community archives that can collect those small ones and then find a way to connect all of those.
Yeah, that's the thing that I never heard any, like, is it institution or like a community that's specifically collecting or have the collection of Indonesian field recordings? Because what I'm telling was, like, I amazed as UPI have the strong agency to give the reward or the position of Filipinos sound archivists that Indonesians still not do it yet. But of course, decentralized is also important because it belongs to the community. That's the next step. But like the first step, like recognizing the Indonesian sound archivists, I think is also important because they have like I just like have a worry that Otto Siddharta, for example, Otto Siddharta and Tony Prabowo are already old, and we never know about their collection. And I think their collection is also important for the further research. Yeah, just an imagination.
Thank you
so much.
Yeah, very interesting discussion. The third one, probably students. Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Caroline. Yeah, I'm from Gallery Lokananta, and I would like to ask questions to Ron May. Yeah. So I'm very interested in how do we deal with the ownership of the indigenous music, because in Lokananta, although it's not exactly as indigenous as possible, the sound archives, we do have numerous cases of songs without songwriters, without lyricist name on the notes. And I would like to ask, how do you trace these roots of indigenous systems? How do you prove that this song is really theirs? And also, how sensitive do we have to be in treating the context of each indigenous sounds?
how do we prevent conflicts that might rise between each indigenous music, because in Lokananta we do have several collections that is sensitive to political issues from the 1965, and sometimes we do not know how to share the knowledge, the information to the public. And then another question, it's a bit much, I'm sorry, but I would like to also ask, how do we deal if the case is certain people would like to claim ownership of the music, which is supposed to be a folk song, a community song, and worst cases, they want to monetize it. How do we deal with those cases within legal framework? Thank you.
These are difficult questions. So I'll address one by one. So how do we deal with ownership of indigenous music, of unknown songs? Actually, in the center as well, we have those because we are dealing with 50-year-old recordings. Not all researchers or collectors gave proper documentation, just the recordings. So we have the same problem. And I think that's the good thing about when we're doing repatriation, we also have like feedback interviews, like we let them listen. We haven't really done a lot much projects on it, but the locals, when they hear it, sometimes they know. So it's really important that it's a partnership between the community and the archive, the center, in finding more information about the songs. Because like I said, we at the center, we don't know everything about the songs, whether it's the context, who are the performers. So that's why we are also very careful. We thread those things on ownership and in dealing with this material. So it's really there's no right and like direct answer to it. It's really very contextual. I hope that answers your question. So, but sometimes letting the locals know helps identify, and then they add. That's when we learn. This is a part of the ritual. This is part of a ritual, but they remove for example, remove the sacred part. So getting the community is very important in determining that. So I don't know if I've used something about how to be sensitive. A tough question. When you go to the field, it's hard. I mean, and even dealing with the archive, I guess that's why personally I can be very conservative in giving access, because again the center is dealing with a lot of very varied sound recordings. It can be for entertainment, that's easy, but then there's layers to, if we give it out, if it's going to be used for any work, there's still the voice, for example, that we need to consider. So that's something more on the ethical, more than the legal. So I tend to, as a collections manager, I tend to be more conservative, and then that's why we at least use copyright as one of the means, or like really scrutinizing what are you going to use these materials for? Because at the end of the day, we are just keepers, but we are not the owners. So there's this, I guess, gatekeeping in a sense. How do we deal with those cases of claim of ownership that wants to monetize? I'm not sure if we've ever encountered such things, but then there are cases, at least in the Philippines, that we thought it was a folk song, but then we found out, there is a known composer. But by the time we knew it, they're copyrighted for looking at the legal aspect, because if it's copyrighted, if it's published, at least I don't know for Indonesia, but for the Philippines, if it's published and it's copyright, after 75 years, and then plus 50 years after the death of the composer, there's those aspects that it becomes public domain. But for those who are living, I think we haven't, have we encountered? I don't think so. So I don't know yet. Also legally, again, I said I'm not a legal expert, but you know, we just try to follow the laws that we that can affect us. I hope I answered your questions. Thank you.
Okay. The next question, maybe. Maybe Mbak first yang di depan.
Probably this question for Miss Barbara, but I'm not asking you as someone who own a NIAP collection, but I guess this question is more of like as you as an academic and as an researcher also. So talking about positioning as Rani have asked before, I was wondering as an undergraduate myself, as a student undergraduate myself, how should I positioning myself in this? As in someone who's not rooting in any culture that is like Nias, or in, what can we say, someone who culture or rooting oral history with music and songs and all. I'm just someone from Java, and I'm literally from Jakarta gitu, and I don't have any culture, I don't have any idea about any other culture, you know. So what I'm asking is how people like us, people like me, who don't understand anything about any culture, about Nias, maybe about oral history, that in Kunst, Jaap Kunst collection, how should I position myself? How should we position ourselves? Yeah, probably that's the question. Maybe if you don't understand the question, I'm just asking about the position, and that's all.
No, I think I understand your question very well. I just think I'm not the person to answer it.
Yeah, I know. Probably someone who maybe can answer my curiosity. Anyone?
I have ideas about it though, but Daniel looking first.
Yeah, maybe my question is not correct, but I'm just thinking, but Citra is really here. Yeah. Last Tuesday, we have a meeting. We maybe make a difference between outcome and output. I think so far, if I'm not wrong, we still work in the outcomes. The outcomes is still in archive, but the output, like she said that she needs to enjoy with the archive, so we need something to work. And I'm very glad we already have meeting maybe from the COEAS, maybe three years already, yeah, still early, and now we can make this on my proposal to make like a roadmap to make the output, not on the outcomes. So far, I feel that still outcome is still in the archive for the some capital knowledge for the bourgeoisie, yeah. But for the common people, they need to know and enjoy. That's all, only my personal comment. Yeah, maybe I'm not wrong. Yeah, thank you.
The next question. Okay, which one? Whatever. Yeah. Siapa aja.
Okay, so I have a question for Barbara. My question is actually once again a bit in the aspect of technicalities, such as my question to Mas Aditya. So I'm curious as to how Jaap Kunst approach the locals and say that he wants to make recordings of their culture or performances. You mentioned that his wife, Katie Kunst, helped him a lot, but I was wondering if he also received help in communicating with the local community, because surely there has to be some sort of intermediary, right, between him, his wife, or his team and the local community. You know, the language barrier, differences in customs, etc. So that is my question. And actually, Phoebe's question is kind of related to mine, so if that's okay with you, I will just give the microphone to her.
Okay. So yeah, actually my question still related to now the questions about the aspect of technicalities. So since there are so many stamps regarding that collected by Jaap Koens in Indonesia a long past ago, I'm just curious, like, is there any information that mention about how Koens maybe faced the resistance of reviews by locals? Since we already know that not all locals people open their self to the others, especially the native one, such as like Suku Baduy and the others. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, difficult questions, and I also sort of feel that I'm now sort of speaking on behalf of Kunst, which is also kind of strange. So I very much feel for you also that how do we position ourselves towards this? I don't know. I think it's changing. It's changing right now very, very quickly, and I think that's a good thing because everyone starts asking themselves, what am I doing here? It's not just indeed a question for me as a curator or a Dutch person, but I think for everyone. And for everyone, I think the answer is different and not really fixed, I hope, but hopefully coming from dialogue and interaction. And then, with regard to your questions about how Kunst worked, what I understand from it, what I know from it, is that actually his working method was quite revolutionary for his time because he was very convinced that the music of people from outside Europe was just as worthwhile as European music. And this was something revolutionary because many Europeans still considered European musical expression to be superior to all the other musical expressions of the world. And the fact that he said, you know, you have to judge music and cultural expression on the basis of the aesthetic premises of the people who make and enjoy this music was very new. But then he had very racialist ideas about who these people were and sort of located them in very sort of, yeah, petrified kaku, yeah? Communities that were unchangeable and needed to be protected from the influences of modernization. Whereas Kunst himself, of course, came with all this technology, recording people, which of course also makes a separation between the one who does the recording as an active subject and the one who is being recorded as a passive object. So that was problematic, but then Kunst was also really creative in this because he was a very good violin player. So he took his violin on his field trips and then would stand in the middle of the village and start playing Dutch folk songs on the violin. And people would come out to watch this and listen to this and think, what is this? And then he said, well, you've listened to my violin playing now I want to hear from you. So that was a kind of reciprocity that was also kind of new in that time. But then there were also really problematic aspects to it with regard to what he actually recorded, which I actually don't know what it was. There is, for instance, this example of, I think it's a Nias example even, of a song that Kunst describes as a song that is sung by by a priest to retrieve dying people from the dead. So then I think, you know, what can we play this? Are we supposed to hear this? Was this recorded when actually someone was dying, or was it just staged for the occasion? What would the era have thought about the fact that the priests have thought about the fact that we can now listen to it everywhere in the world, no matter who? Kunst was clearly not thinking about those issues. And I also think there was not much resistance directly to him recording, but there was, I think, a lot of deceit in what would actually happen with these recordings and what the implications were of being recorded. And I would sometimes even go so far as to say, you know, there's a big discussion in Europe now about human remains and what should happen with them, and whether they should be returned, or whether sometimes people don't want them to be returned because they say, you know, they've been sort of, they're jinxed already, so we don't want them back. But with human voices being recorded, you could also say maybe they're human remains, you know? So all these ethical questions were not of any concern to Guns because he just wanted to collect like the butterflies that I showed earlier. So yeah, it's a very multifaceted picture, I think. I don't know whether that entirely answers your questions.
Is that, do you want to follow up again or not? Okay. Is it another question?
I might have a question for the people from NESP. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Hi Stevie, hi Bas. Nice to see you. I'm really glad you could share with us these colonial collections, and I just want to ask a little bit further about, for the people in this room, if they want to access these collections. Bas already said that the best thing to do would be to partner with the Dutch institution. Of course, within this project, that is now possible for the people who are here. What would you advise people here to do apart from that, to access these collections, and how can we make these collections to such a way available to people here that they sort of get an idea of what is in them?
Yeah, good question, and a very relevant one that's also going on within our institution as well. For now, I have the very unsatisfying answer saying contact either me or Bas. Within the institution.
An entrance.
Yes, as an entry point, because for now that's a way for us to use our connection within the institute. To give some urgency to have people research our collections and point them in the right direction. But me and Bas and some other colleagues are also raising this question within the organization itself, because there are a lot of limitations on how you can access it, if you're allowed to access it. For example, you have some certain rules that you have to be part of either an institution. Well, I don't think you have to be part of an institution to research your collection or to be seen as an expert, or valued as an expert browsing through your collection as well. So that's some institutional things, but for example, the Schatkamer, or the treasure room where Bas was telling about, that we were advocating a lot, that we said that, for example, the bijzondere gemeente, like the Caribbean islands that are still part of the Dutch kingdom, Curaçao, for example, that they now can't access this material, even though it should be public for the entirety of the Dutch kingdom. But it's not. So there's a lot of limitation, and we said we also think it's very relevant if Indonesia, as a former colony of the Netherlands, have complete access as well to this platform that supposedly takes a lot of institutional boundaries away to engage with our collections. But it's not, and it has to do with rights or technical difficulties or things that we have to make agreements with the national government, and we try to find routes through the backends of the institute and find ways to open up in a practical way on short notice. But the fact is that we're, for lots of time, for lots of people, we're completely inaccessible. And I think that if we say we have a responsibility to open up our institute and for people to relate to our archival material and engage with it, we can't shut our doors beforehand. So this is something that we use this project like Sounds Familiar to create pathways within the institute to open up for bigger audiences and specific audiences. But it's a long way to go. We've been working on it for many years. But
maybe
it's,
we can use Resound as well to open those paths or find some space in the cracks in the system to sort of find ways to enable that.
I think that's necessary for us to open that up. Otherwise, we don't see the people that unsuccessfully knocks on our doors and we didn't open the door, for example. So this is one of the interventions that can help open up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stevie, for the answer. I think Bilin Halal already make online some of the...
Yeah, via Claria, right, Stevie? But Claria is only accessible via a Dutch research institution, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah.
And some things are
can get there, but people from here who are not connected to the UvA cannot.
Okay. That's limited. Okay, I think it has been a delightful discussion. We can talk about everything here further after this. We have limited time, and time is up. Thank you so much for the speaker. Thank you, Stevie, for joining us. Please give applause to the speaker. As I will stop here, I'll see you again another time. Have a good day.
Can I make a very brief note? Because I think for the workshop on Friday, there were still some questions from the students. So I'm happy to give a very short explanation now. And if people have questions, feel free to come to me. Feel free to ask. It's not stupid. Juga dalam bahasa Indonesia bisa. Saya mengerti sedikit-sedikit. So please feel free to ask. As you have heard, the website, the Jacobs website, has been hacked. Just yesterday. Where we need it now, it's been hacked. I was really like, oh! But our IT person has made an alternative available on another address. You all have the address right now. Great. So you can search there. Please don't go to the other address because it's hacked.